reconstructing a model, a Revit model. I'm using a rather small building model to illustrate a technique that I think will be extraordinarily useful. I've created a new Revit file with a blank template. No construction underlaid, no levels, no nothing. And the model that I wish to reconstruct was recently submitted yesterday. For design portion of the CPHC2 exam is this 3D model, right? So the number of complexities associated with it, but it's a fairly simple model. Anyway, let me close this and explain what I'm doing. So the first thing I'm doing is I have a blank template, and what I want to do is create a Revit link to the model that I intend to reconstruct. I hit open, and what that effectively does, because Revit right now it has no knowledge of any levels, so it needs to infer that information from the file that I brought in. Right, so, but Revit does need a default level with which to begin. So what we're looking at is what Revit is calling level 1. How can I demonstrate that? I'm going to create an elevation view, right? Because we have no views here of this. Well, let's see. Floor plans, yes. All right, we do have a level 1 floor plan. That's what it created, level 1 floor. Are there any elevations? There are no elevations. So what I'm going to do is create one. And I'm going to I have this rather unremarkable elevation marker because it doesn't know anything about elevation markers because I didn't start with a Revit template. Let me just add that, okay, and tell Revit that I'm going to go to that elevation view. Now it doesn't matter that it pointed off to the west. Right? Let's expand it. Effectively, that's going to be a section through some part of the house. Let's just move the scope line over a bit. So that's a section through a model that I just created. So if I select that and say go to view, this is what I've done. Right? All of these levels are inferred from the Revit link that I just created. It defaults to a coarse detail level. If I change it to fine, I can see the various layers of the elements that were modeled. So basically we have now a blank file with a link to an original. Okay, let's go to a default 3D view, and that'll give me something like this. And what is that? That's basically a Revit link. In order to reconstruct a simple, selective, say I wanted to reconstruct a Revit model that consisted only of the interior. Now, this may be trivial in this case because the model is so small, but if I'm doing a building, it's the size of a city block, that's significant. So what I'm going to do is go to a top view, okay, and take this linked view and click on what's called displace elements. And I'm going to displace it in the X direction, say minus 200 feet. Okay, so that moved it off to the left 200 feet. Let's go back. So what's significant about that? What's significant about it is that this is a Revit link, and I'm able to select from it, even though, in order to make this sure a little bit easier, let's go to visibility graphics and hide levels, because selecting, oops, and hide levels. So now all we see is the model. While this is a Revit link, I can still select individual elements in Revit. Okay, let's say I don't want that floor. If it's tabbing through. Okay, so my links selected are the roof and now that south-facing facade. Now, one of the features of Revit that's unusual or limited, whatever you want to call it, is that when you're referencing things in the linked model, it doesn't know, the filters don't know what the heck you've selected. But I do have two elements on the clipboard and I know what they are. If I copy them, that wasn't on the clipboard. Now they're on the clipboard because I copied them to the clipboard. And because this is a new model, and I tell Revit to say, paste them to the same place. Okay, it's going to complain that there are duplicate types. But basically what it does is it starts to reconstruct a model independent of the link. So let's say I wanted all four walls. I want that wall as well. Okay, you have to be a little bit patient because you don't get the visual feedback always from the Revit selection. I'm going to tab and select my east and north wall, and let's not stop. Let's go to around east, north. Let's not push our luck. East and north walls. Copy those to the clipboard and then paste them to the same place. What's the point? Let me illustrate by trying to load this link, which will cause it to unload the model that I'm looking at, the model that I'm looking at. So if I tell Revit to reopen the source, it's going to say, yep, well, unloaded as a link. Can't use undo, that's fine. It'll take a minute to do that. Okay, So there's my source file. Here's the file where I started to reconstruct, right? All this geometry is now a separate file. So if I export this to an AutoCAD, I don't know how far I'm going to take this. So that's all I want, right? I'm exporting that and save it. A lot of work for that sound. Export reconstruction. And I'm going to start SketchUp now. I hope. It's off on another screen, but I'll pull it into place. I think we can see that, right? So SketchUp starts with various dudes and ladies. I like to switch, I tell my students to switch to parallel projection whenever you're doing something you need to measure. And now I'm just going to import that CAD file, right? That reconstruction step. Doesn't matter where, because we started with a new model, right? It becomes a block, a group in SketchUp. Notice that in Revit, I did not copy into my reconstructive workspace, column sets, any of the windows, because we don't need them for the purposes of WUFI. Oh no, it did copy the windows. No matter. I could have deleted them. Okay. SketchUp, back to SketchUp. And then what I would do in this case, and what I've done with other models, is basically explode that result and just select the faces that I need. Forgetting allows me to orbit without holding the shift key. Oops. I'm holding the control key and selecting basically the exterior elements that I can see. Right. I'm missing stuff on the west side. But what I do is copy that to the clipboard. Right? And then I take all that, basically, I don't need it anymore. And then tell Revit just paste it, SketchUp just paste it in place. So what we have are things that we can use in WUFI, right? Then it's just a matter of filling in the openings. pretty simple matter. Whoops, I don't know why it did that. Oh, yeah, we have a face. Do we have a face there? Okay. No, we don't have a face there. Why not? Sometimes you have to trick it. You probably know that. Just draw an edge and it'll interpolate the adjacent face. This side, just drawing edges arbitrarily to complete the face. I'm probably boring my viewer at this point, but we might as well finish what we started. Clean up the geometry if you're a purist. Oops. All I'm doing is removing the lines that separate, right? Because I didn't get the west wall. We have an incomplete surface on that point. No matter. Now, sure, we could do some layer organization all on same tag. He's going to give me my walls. Extension WUFI plus. So properties. Opaque. Zone 1, etc. I think I can select my windows pretty much independently, right? Because they're all on there. WUFI plus properties, those are going to be transparent, inner side of zone 1. Okay. So here's how I went about organizing all that. If I simply start by quickly exporting geometry to WUFI, as you know, it will invoke a copy of WUFI. Let's put that up on the screen, right? Where you can start to populate this stuff. So what I did beyond this is tedious and beyond the scope of this discussion, but that's basically how I went about it. And that was a reasonable amount of time for this. Thanks for listening.